Welcome to the Brand Boss Show, empowering you to rock your brand like a boss. This show exists to share all the tools, tips, and secrets you need to maximize the impact of your brand.
Welcome back, Brand Bosses. This week, I am very excited to be joined by my friend and mentor, Dan Mori. He doesn't like fanfare, but I will tell you that he is one of the most genuine people I have ever met. And if you know me, that's a huge compliment. I have had the incredible honor to learn from him, to be challenged by him, to work with him. He is a highly successful entrepreneur of over a decade with several successful ventures, including being the president of Employment Solutions, which is what we're going to talk about here today, as well as anything else you want to say. So welcome, Dan.
Hey, Rachel. Hi, it's great to be here. You're right. I don't like fanfare. I always get embarrassed when people say nice things about me. So maybe that's one of those things I need to spend some time in reflecting and working on. But I'm glad to be here. I'm excited about what you're doing and how far you've come just in the time that we've known each other for sure. And definitely love the show that you're putting out there. It's got a lot of great nuggets, and I'm hopefully we can add to that today.
Thank you so much. I'm sure we will. So let's dive into that. Why don't you share with the brand bosses a little bit about Employment Solutions and kind of some of the challenges that you were experiencing?
Absolutely. So first and foremost, I'm not a brand boss. I rely on people that are much better at that than I am, like you, Rachel. So take everything I'm about to share through that context. So Employment Solutions is a staffing and recruiting firm, and we started almost 13 years ago now in upstate New York in a town called Elmira. And myself and two of my good friends got together. We said, hey, let's build this thing and really scale it. And we did. And we got to a certain size, and we realized that if we wanted to keep growing at the rate that we wanted to scale at, acquisition was going to have to be part of that model. So we actually started acquiring companies. And in that period of time, we've actually acquired 4 other companies that have added a multitude of offices for us. And today, we've grown from that one tiny little office in Elmira to a dozen offices across the country. Where half of that is actually through acquisition. So it's been incredibly fun to do that. But one of the challenges that you have when you're doing that is you're bringing cultures and styles and histories and brand from a company, and you're bringing it into, an existing company. And you have to really be deliberate and treat that process with a little bit of care, or it could go awry pretty quickly. And I'll tell you, one of the things that we have done historically is we've actually looked at our acquisitions through the filter of how much brand equity does this company that we're buying have in their local market? Is it strong brand equity? Is there continuity there? Do people actually know and positively associate the brand with a staffing or an employment agency? And if it does, then we'll actually give a long tail brand transition. We might actually keep that name for a longer period of time. Whereas if the brand, equity or the brand strength in a particular market is near non-existent, like we'll rebrand that really quickly. Now, I think what we started talking about on this is, no matter which way we choose, whether we rebrand really quickly or it's a long tail, like there still has to be a branding process. And that's something that I think over the years we've not paid as much attention to or as enough attention to as we should until really this time around. And I think that's what we're going to talk about today. But that's really a little bit about us and how we've grown. And, it's been an exciting journey to help good people find great employment and help companies find good people. But it's not without its challenges, and it's certainly not without its challenges to operate under multitudes of brands, and it creates some confusion in the marketplace for us.
Yeah, absolutely. You touched on so many good things there. I want to go back to something you said about culture. And one of the things that I appreciate about you so much and about Employment Solutions, and I know I've particularly obviously heard it in my conversations with you as we go through this rebrand, is your sensitivity to the culture that's already there. So can you talk to a minute that idea of, I feel like sometimes whether it's an acquisition, whether it's, coming into a position that you didn't have before, whatever it is, sometimes people can come in kind of with an agenda and say, okay, this is how we do things now, and disregard the culture that was already there. And when it comes to this idea of rebranding, obviously it's the entire experience. So that's true internally just as much externally. Can you talk for a minute about how you really sought to bring those cultures kind of together.
Sure. Yeah, that's a great point. I think when it comes to culture, one thing that we're pretty sensitive to is the fact that, we recognize that all companies they're a collection of people. That's it. And the people are the ones that actually make the culture. Now, I will say that leadership has a strong ability to influence that culture based on how they treat their people and the type of people that they hire. But at the end of the day, it's really how people operate within a company with one another, interacting with your customers, your vendors, and the processes of that company. They're going to create that culture and how they really feel. So we recognize that, and I'm the last person that would want to actually have my daily routine, my history, all that stuff just kind of cast aside because some new person came in and said, hey, this is a better way to do it, without even really trying to, understand how I'm doing it, So we understand that if we don't, if we're going to acquire a company, we're not really acquiring a company. We're actually bringing people onto our team, and those people will bring along the business, right? So part of our acquisition strategy is to understand what kind of people are they? Do they fit our culture or do they not? We have to outline that ahead of time. And if they really don't, and it's gonna be too much of a culture shock to mesh it together, we avoid it. We just walk away, because it's not worth doing it for them or for us, So that's a critical step where we require ourselves to meet all the people before we actually do an acquisition. But when we get there, we let those people know that there are not going to be any drastic major changes unnecessarily immediately, right? There's some things we do have to change from a corporate standpoint, but for the most part, how people operate and do their jobs, we actually give them a lot of runway to be able to do that, so we can observe how they do things. We can say, hey, how are you doing things? Because if they're doing things well enough to where we want to buy them as a company, they're clearly doing things well enough to where we might be able to learn from them, right? So, we look at that, and then through that conversation, saying, oh, how do you do this? Oh, this is really cool that you do it this way. Like, can I share with you how we do it? And some really amazing things happen. In that process, there's really one of three outcomes that happens. One is you recognize the way that they're actually doing that is better than what you've been doing, and you can actually take that process and then bring it back to your organization to make the entire organization better. Now, that's an amazing thing that happens, and it's happened for us before. But when that happens and the people that you've now just brought into your team, when they see that the way that they were doing things now positively influences the rest of the acquiring company, it does amazing things for their buy-in or their engagement or the value they feel they bring to a new organization, right? So that's the first thing that can happen. The second thing is typically, you'll say, hey, listen, this is the way that we do it. And then through that process, they realize, wow, like we could have been doing it this whole way this other time, and your way is actually better. We're excited to learn that because it's going to make our job easier, better, and more productive and more opportunities to grow, right? And then you plan on an acclimation process to that new thing, or it ends up being some sort of hybrid, like, oh, wow, you really do it this way. That's pretty cool. We do it this way. And I think there's a way, like a better version if we combine these systems or ways of doing things. And either that, like, that's really, really powerful. Now, the alternative is to those three things. Like, if you just come and say, this is the way that we do it, no one's ever going to hear you. They're going to think, oh, here we go again. We're getting wrapped up. They don't care about us as people. They don't care about what we're doing. They didn't listen to us. We're not being heard. And they're going to disengage before they even have a chance to get going with you. And that is just a hard spot to dig out of. So we really focus on that. And we understand that, like, that's a big part of what we're bringing in is the people and the culture. And if we do it the right way, the rest of the business will be secured and handle itself.
And that's such a powerful piece of branding, whether it's a rebrand or branding in general. Culture is part of the brand experience.
Mm-hmm.
Your brand experience includes your team as well as your customers. And when you have that kind of sensitivity and when you really work to learn from each other, and it's not an us versus them, but it becomes a let's all sit around, I love the way that you describe it, the same side of the table, and have this conversation and figure out how we're going to mesh this together and learn to do this as a team. How have you seen that impact the experience that your customers then have with your brand?
So I see a positive impact with the customers, and really when they see a level of continuity, and here's actually, we just had a call just ahead of this session here with one of my branch managers in a different market that was asking for, like, hey, what's a really good way to get like recommendations or referrals from our clients, like that'll say nice things about us? Because it feels like when we go out and ask, it's becoming a burden. Like, it's like asking them to do one more thing for us and go fill this review out or do this or write this. they don't feel super engaged to do that. Not all of them do that. And they asked, like, is there any office that's had great luck in doing that? And I was like, well, our Fort Lauderdale branch, amazingly, they sent this request out, simple one-liner, like, hey, would you be willing to write a recommendation about us? We want to, put this out there to start telling the story about how we engage with our clients. And, they were able to get back countless, literally company letterheads, glowing recommendations, offer for the people to say, hey, if you've got any questions about working with them, give me a call personally. And it was amazing, and really, that is the extension of the brand. That is the people that worked in this office built that relationship. They exemplified the traits and characteristics of the type of people that we want to employ at Employment Solutions. And that reaches out to, the clients, and they see that, and they're willing, when the client sees the value that we give them and the care that we take with the relationship that we have, they're going to reciprocate, And then when you see in a brand new market where the manager was calling me from, the relationships they haven't had the time to develop yet, you see it's a little bit like, hey, I'm not sure I'm willing to write this on letterhead, or, I'll do 2 lines in an email, or if you write it up for me, I'll sign it, which isn't super authentic. So, I think the way that the brand piece extends itself and we see that positive impact is just learning from the offices that have succeeded in developing that relationship and exhibiting those traits, and then showcasing that to the other managers of the other offices and the people to develop that piece of it. But brand's not something that happens overnight. Brand is something that you have to work on consistently to maintain, and then eventually it will take hold and people will know you for it.
Absolutely. And it becomes the consistent experience of that authenticity that you were just describing.
Yeah.
Absolutely. So we're going to talk about a couple different pieces of your rebrand, but I want to start with, what is something that either you wish you would have known, or that maybe people don't always think about before they take on a rebrand like this, particularly when it comes to rebranding companies that have been acquired? What are some things that you would share with anybody who is either about to go into a rebrand like that, or some things that you wish you could go back and share with yourself that you know now?
Yeah, no, that's also a great question. And I don't think it's even specific to just acquiring a company. I think that if anybody is going to go through a brand refresh or a complete rebrand, or if you're going to acquire a company and have to like assimilate that and rebrand it and bring it in, something like that, I think the number one thing that I did not realize going into it is how many tentacles a brand actually has. So if you think about what a brand is truly the tangible touch point between you and anybody that you impact through your business. So in our case, we're kind of a two-sided platform where we have job seekers on one side, candidates, employees on one side, and then we have customers and prospective customers. And if you can think about all the ways that we interact with those customers, from an email signature to the little icon that shows up on our webpage in the browser, to having little pictures, or just the phone greeting when people call in, every single touch point that you have with somebody that you serve, whether it be a customer, a vendor, a job seeker, whatever it might be, it's enormous. There are so many touch points that have that. And to really have a strong, really, brand with great continuity, you have to identify every single one of those touch points. And you have to look at, say, hey, how does this touch point work? What is the purpose of this particular touch point? And how can I optimize the brand so my customers really understanding who we are through this piece of it? And it could be something as little as, and this is going to sound silly, but I'm like one of those people that have the quote in the email signature, right? And here's the thing, if you want to have a strong, consistent brand, like, you have to know what is the value that you really provide to somebody. And everything that you do, every single touch point that you do has to be aligned with that value. That's it. It can't be some tangent thing, right? So even though like I might see this quote that is meaningful and impactful to me, that might not actually align with the brand, right? I might, I have to think about, like, what is the value that I provide and what is a quote for that? And it could be a simple quote that says, hey, if you want to grow your business, grow your people, right? Like, that would be an appropriate quote to put out there, but like if I'm like, hey, you can't steal second with your foot on first, like, that really has no, like, yeah, that's a cool quote, and that talks about risk and reward and things you can and can't do. But the reality is like, it has no bearing on anything that we do. So it doesn't really align with the brand. So I know that that's kind of a really weird rabbit hole answer to it, but like, that's the big thing, like going through the checklist of all the ways all the tentacles and the massive touch points that our brand has with our job seekers and our customers, and then bringing continuity and alignment to that was huge. And I think that most people probably overlook it because they think a brand is a logo or some colors or a tagline. And yeah, that's part of it. Like that's one of those tentacles, but no, it's so much more than that. Like, that's a brand is big time. And I wish that I would have known that years ago, because I would have literally compiled a checklist or a sheet of all those things that said, hey, these are all the different touch points. And the reason it's beneficial, just kind of in closing, is not only making sure that you can do a regular inventory or audit on how well your brand or the continuity of your brand to this. When you're acquiring a company, then you'll know what to look at. You're like, hey, what kind of business cards do we have out? Do we have billboards somewhere? Do we have advertisements in a periodical somewhere or a newspaper, like on a job board? Like you'll know all those places that you need to look, that you can quickly transition the brand over so nothing gets left behind. Because the last thing you want to do is basically be like, hey, we're Employment Solutions in South Florida now, but all of a sudden we've got this career page just hanging out there that still says trans hire, right? Like that's going to create confusion, amongst our customers, against our job seekers. And that confusion is going to lead to people doing nothing or feeling not certain or super comfortable or confident in how well they can trust us, right? Continuity creates trust. And if you want to grow a successful business, you have to focus on having that continuity and that trust with the people you serve.
Absolutely. And you touched on something I was going to have you dig into, and then you did it for us. So thank you for that. Just, it's one thing for me with my background and as the brand boss to say, the importance of consistency in your brand, but for other people to hear it from you as the president of a company, as somebody walking through this from the business owner perspective, the importance of consistency in terms of your customers.
It's huge.
It is. All right.
It's huge.
Go ahead.
Yeah.
Were you going to say something else?
Yeah, no, I was just going to say, like, if you're out there and you're thinking about the companies that have the most sticky brands, whether you align with these types of companies or not, but Target, McDonald's, all these places, Home Depot, like all these huge companies that have like that brand, it's because they've basically taken the time and the attention to make the look and feel of every way that you interact with them as a consumer be the same. Because customer familiarity creates comfort, and comfort creates, obviously, we know it's hard to stretch outside of your comfort zone. So when you become comfortable dealing with a company, you're not going to want to leave. So that level of comfort creates a sphere of stickiness within that brand. And that's why every time you walk into a McDonald's, whether you like that food or not, or you're a fast food eater or not, any of that stuff, like, it's going to be the same experience. And for their super fans, like, they love that experience, and for the people that don't like it, like, it's whatever. But same thing with a Target. Like, I know that I can walk into a Target pretty much in any city, and I'm pretty well oriented to the store. They're all laid out pretty similar. Like, where the dollar spot is, where, the food is on one side if it's a super Target. Like, you just kind of know that stuff. And, if it was a different experience every time I engaged with those companies, I would never get that feeling of familiarity or comfort with them. And I'd have to overcome that discomfort every single time engaging with them. And eventually I want to find a place that I'm more comfortable doing business with. Right. And then I'll settle in there because, people are creatures of habit. So if you want to build super fans and super customers and that super tribe of people that engage with you as a company, you really need to make sure that every way they possibly engage with you is consistent, has continuity, and it creates that level of comfort that's going to make them feel welcomed and stick with your company. And that's really the importance of brand and getting it right. Absolutely.
I'm just going to turn this podcast over to you.
Oh man, I'm only just resharing stuff I've learned from you. That's it. I'm just a good student here.
That's so good. That's so good. I love what you just brought up about comfort, because, I talk about it in terms of it builds trust, and that's true. And what trust does is it creates a comfortable atmosphere where people feel at home, where people feel welcomed, where people feel safe, where people want to, as you mentioned, you want to stay somewhere that's familiar. Even if you already know that you're going to go in for toothpaste and come out with 5 things at least that weren't on your list, at least if you're me.
That's true. And honestly, that says something about how well Target does branding. They're obviously the running joke is, I never know what I want at Target. I just kind of let them tell me what I need. Right. Like, think about that. Like, think about how powerful that is, that there's now a group, a kind of a groundswell of their customers that are just trusting Target. They're trusting them so much to say, hey, I understand that, like, when I walk to your store, I might not know everything that I need, but I'm going to trust you to tell me what I need and I'm going to buy it. Right. Like, And that's because they really focused on their brand. And that's why they're like the main big box store, the physical brick and mortar retailer that is not getting beat up by Amazon. And now you're starting to look at places like Amazon and Walmart that are starting to look at cues on the branding and the kind of what Target is doing to create that super fan, right? So, I mean, you can take some cues from that, and a lot of it starts with branding. You know, it's not everything, but it's a pretty important piece.
It sure is, because it's that consistent experience of authenticity, you know, and
Yeah.
you talked about how important that consistency really is for your team, for your customers, for your organization, for your presence in the community. And that's something I want to go into next. So, you, as Employment Solutions, you are in many different companies. You have kind of the global local challenge going on.
Yeah.
So, what are some of those things for anybody listening who has that global local situation where you have the one company, but you have many different branches that are really working specifically in their regions? Can you talk about that for a little bit and how that plays into what to keep in mind for a rebrand, maybe some things that you're learning as we go along?
Absolutely. So that has been a big challenge, and it's an ongoing challenge that we continue to work through to try to get our arms around it. You know, we've not really found any great resources for a company our size that's kind of in that middle market size that helps us really effectively manage the global local presence of having, you know, a distributed distribution model, essentially. You know, so the biggest challenge we have with it is, one, you know, the offices in Florida, the environment that we're in, you know, the kind of the community culture that we're in is very different than our offices in the southern tier of New York. You know, it's just different community cultures. So sometimes the content that we put out, even though it's directly aligned with who we are as a company, it's going to interact differently with where we're distributing it to, right? And the people that we might be distributing it to. So that right there is a challenge. I mean, something you have to really think through. You know, I'm going to put this clever piece of social media content out, and it's absolutely aligns with our, you know, our mission to help good people find good jobs and help good companies find good people. It's going to directly align with that piece of it. But the way that the market here in Florida might perceive it might be different than what they perceive it in New York or Connecticut or Jersey or Texas or Carolina, North Carolina. You know, so you really do have to think about that piece of it. Same thing with, you know, companies. You know, we service companies that are physically located in these areas in several other states. There's different norms and business practices, and, you know, you have to be sensitive to that and understand, how does the brand that I'm putting out there interact with this piece? And is that community norm going to create a filter that's going to augment or alter the brand that I'm putting out there in a way that I don't want? You know, so again, we were just having a call with one of my managers in a different market, and he's got an amazing prospect of a client, somebody that we would love to do business with. You know, unfortunately, you know, they're demanding rates that are just not conducive to us and delivering the value that we can deliver. You know, so instead of just saying no thanks, or, you know, trying to be a low price vendor and cutting rates to get their business because it'd be cool to do business with them, you know, we're taking the approach of just saying, hey, we're not gonna engage in this, but we want to share with you some of the pitfalls that your model is going to have, and the symptoms are evident in what you're telling us why you're looking to move from one vendor to another. So we actually want to give them some business advice to say, hey, this is, you know, part of the reason you're having the issues you're having is because of this, this, and this. And, you know, we're not a good fit. So I'm not telling you this to try to get your business. Like, let's just take that off the table. And let me try to give you some advice to maybe be a little bit better in finding good people and however you can do that. You know, so that's a little bit about, you know, that one market is different. I wouldn't be able to say that message in a different market, you know? So I don't know. It's a bit of a rabbit hole, but that's definitely one of the challenges is that global local model and being consistent, and then understanding how that message is going to be relayed in the market that you're serving it in.
Yeah, and that's a really good point you bring up, because branding, you know, it starts with like digging into the identity of your company, but then, like we were talking about with tone, branding isn't just about you. Branding also is how your audience is perceiving and receiving the message that you're sending of who you are.
100%. You
And
know,
so,
and
go ahead.
really, just on that piece, Rachel, I think that, you know, one thing from a good leadership practice or a good management practice, when you're actually delivering a message, you know, the understanding or comprehension of how that message is received is on the onus of the person delivering the message, never on the person hearing the message, right? So if you're a company and you're delivering your brand as a message through whatever variety of mediums out there, the onus is on you as the company or the brand boss of that company to make sure that that message is being heard in the appropriate way and it's not being misguided or misinterpreted. So that it's always on the company. And if you're a company, you're going to say, oh, well, we said this thing, but people didn't understand it. That's their problem, not ours. That's pretty short-sighted. And you need to take a look in the mirror and think through that one, because really the onus on who's, the comprehensive message is always on the messenger, never the person that's listening to it.
That's so good. And how important would you say is in that message, whether it's a message your company is sending or, let's even talk for a moment as a leader, how much impact does the way that message is received, the way that message is being sent, does the congruence with the authenticity of who you are, either as a person or as a company, how much does that play into the message and the impact that it has on the people receiving that message?
I think it's everything. If you want to be seen as genuine and authentic, I think that the message that you share has to be received in a way that's going to showcase who you really are, right? So if you're going to basically say something in a way that maybe the words don't align or the tonality, or if it's, in person, the body language, if those things don't really align with who you are as a person, then the message is certainly going to be misheard and misinterpreted. What happens there is it doesn't even matter if it's something trivial. If somebody thinks that you're one way and that's truly how you are, and then you say something and they misinterpret it and they start to think, well, maybe they're not that way. Maybe they're this other way, or maybe this is who this company really is. As soon as you create that conflict out there, like, I don't know who this company is anymore, again, now you just move somebody from the comfort and trust of knowing who you are to starting to question who you are as a person or as a company. And that's the significant. And again, if you're moving them from the trusted camp to the I'm not really sure, the confused camp, it's even harder to get them to go back to the trusted camp, because they feel a little bit unsure. And the next step after the I'm not sure camp is the, maybe I should look elsewhere camp. And then your business starts to shrink, so, or as a leader, if you're delivering that message, your people start to look elsewhere for other jobs, so really, I think that, how you deliver that message is really, really important, because you could move the people that you want to keep in the wrong direction if you say it wrong.
That's so true. That's absolutely true. And if you are, we talked this week about imposter syndrome. If you are pretending to be somebody who you're not, they're going to see through that. But at the same time, if you show up not congruent with who you are, if you show up as less than who you are, and you aren't being congruent with yourself, maybe out of fear of being perceived as not being congruent with yourself, right? It's this kind of like vicious cycle. We hear that lie in our heads that, you're trying to be somebody that you're not. But when you listen to that lie, then you show up as somebody that you're not. Yeah. And then that's actually the message that you end up sending, which has that impact on the person receiving the message as, is this really in alignment with who this person is? I don't know what's going on here. That confused camp, like you were talking about. Would you agree with that?
I would. And it's really funny you say that. And I wouldn't normally share this level of detail about a situation, but it's pretty relevant. So the example that I just mentioned before, where I was talking to one of our managers about how to handle a request from a potential customer that'd be great to work with, but they're demanding really low rates. Like they really don't, they're not willing or they're not able to invest in the solution that we can provide, right? And again, they have vendors in place that are already doing that are already meeting it, and probably for that reason. But our response back to that customer is, we really appreciate your interest in doing business with us. We appreciate how candid you were saying this is the price point we need to be at in order to work together. We want to let you know that we cannot actually accept those terms. But here's why. Because we already have people in this marketplace that are looking for the same type of skilled employee as you. They're actually paying more. And we're in a tight labor market, which means there's less of those skilled people to go around, which means when we find a good person, we naturally are going to send that person, to the customer that's actually willing to invest more in that solution. So by accepting a lower rate, and basically charging less to you than I am to somebody else, I'm naturally going to create an internal conflict that's going to basically force me to give you less service. and send you a lesser quality person because I'm going to send the best quality people to the people that are paying for it, right? And that's not a position that we want to be in as a company. We don't ever want to, pick and choose which quality candidates we send to which customers based on, how the customer values the relationship and what they're willing to pay for that, and we're basically saying, I directed the manager. I'm like, hey, listen, like, be honest. Like, let them know that their other vendors are doing that same thing right now, that their other vendor has customers that are looking for the same type of people, and those customers are paying them more. And the reason that this customer is unhappy is because they're getting the people that they can't actually send to their other customers. And that's it. So like literally by demanding that low rate and the fact that somebody actually accepted it, they did it for the dollars, not the relationship. So just be forthright, like, hey, we would love to do business with you. However, we're not going to put ourselves in a situation where we're conflicted between how to best serve our customers, where you're always going to be at the short end of the stick. That's just not who we are as a company. We'd rather just avoid that altogether, and then tell you the honest truth about what's really going on with your other vendors and why you're having these issues, and hopefully you can resolve them, but we can't put you in that situation because it's a no-win situation for you, and it's a conflicted situation at best for us. And that's just not how we operate. So, that becomes who we are as a company, and does that mean we don't get to do business with a big name company? Yeah, I guess it does, but do we get to sleep better at night knowing that we did the right thing and that we're not going to be, pitting our customers against each other for a limited inventory? It does, and yeah.
That's a really powerful conversation right there. And it's a hard one, but I love it because it's real talk. It's honesty. And what you ended up giving that potential customer was honesty.
Yeah.
And whether they go with, come back and go with you or go with a different vendor, you really can't you really can't put a price tag on honesty. And you also can't put a price tag on being true to who you are. Like you said, the ability to know that you are congruent with who you are and you are truly doing what's best for, what I know is your company's most valuable asset is your people, which includes the people that you're placing, the people that you're, serving, and the people who are working on your team.
100%. You can't sell out in business. If you sell out, you'll eventually be sold out. And that's just the nature of it, and if you truly go into this game trying to chase the dollar and doing whatever it takes to make the dollar, then eventually that house of cards will come tumbling down. And we learned that, a long time ago, and we try to really build our brand around the fact that, we're going to solve problems the best way we know how, and there's going to be an equitable value exchange. The value that we provide to a customer, like, we expect an equitable exchange of value in return. And if those things can't, come to alignment, that's okay. It just basically means that, we're not right for each other, and we can live with that.
So good. So good. Yeah, I'm just going to digress for a minute and give Dan another shout out. So he and his best friend Sharif also have a podcast where they share incredible business wisdom like this called the FAQ Show. So definitely go check it out. It's one of my most favorite podcasts. Check it out, rate, review, subscribe, share. Check out their Instagram, The FAQ Show, FAQ Show. And you can get more amazing business wisdom like that. But go ahead. Were you going to add something?
No, I appreciate that. Thank you. Thank you so much for that shout out. It means a lot.
Yeah, you're welcome. I mean, I can't let them just get gold from you here and not know where to find it elsewhere. So I could talk to you all day about this. You just have so much wisdom. You have so much wisdom. I know you say you're not a brand boss, but I feel like, I've worked with a lot of different businesses over the years, and I feel like you are a business leader who gets branding more than just about anybody that I know or anybody I've ever worked with. And I think that you've seen the impact in your business as a result because you understand it. Is there anything that, as a business owner or somebody who's coming to the conversation more from the business side, who might say, okay, I get that branding's important, but it's not really my thing or whatever, what would you share with them maybe about how important branding is, or something that you're learning as you go through the rebrand, just anything that you would share with the business side of that conversation from just the understanding that you have of the impact of, like we've been talking about, that consistent experience of authenticity that branding creates.
Sure. If I were to sit down with a business owner and give them some business advice about how to approach branding and have them say, yeah, I get that it's important, but if they're going to say, I get that it's important, but then they really don't believe it's important. And this is honestly what I would tell them. One, you have to decide who you want to be as a company and which ball field you want to play on. If you want to always compete on price for the kind of the small market and the small margin business, and really kind of compete amongst the bottom feeders, then ignore your brand. That's don't spend any money on branding, because that's where you're going to play, and you don't need to invest in money to stay there. Like, you can just be there, right? That's where companies with bad brands fall to, and then they end up competing on price, and then they blame on all sorts of these like outside external indicators that's they just didn't get themselves right. But if you're in business to really make an impact and grow a business and actually achieve great things, right, and have an amazing company, like if that's what you're trying to do, then get brand right and understand that it's not an overnight thing. It's not a fix your brand quick thing. It is literally a process. It is like going to the gym. Like, it's about the time and the repetitions that you put into this over a long period of time. But if you want to start to compete and actually have people compete with you based on you being the known company in an area, opposed to being the most used commodity in an industry, like, you have to get your brand right. You have to hire an expert to do it. Like, if you're a brand boss, awesome, lean into it and really be looking for ways to innovate and connect your brand to the people you serve, and all those little interchange points that between the people that interact with your company, like, and get your brand down to that level so it permeates the lowest possible transaction, consistently. But if that's not you, if you're not a brand boss, which I appreciate you giving me some props on that, I recognize that I'm not. I think the one thing I really know about brand is it's just about the interchange between people. That's it. Like, and I get people because it's the industry that I'm in. Like, I have to, or I wouldn't be in business. But, so if you're not a brand boss, or you don't have the time to be a brand boss, hire an expert. That's why we came to you, Rachel, with Employment Solutions, to say, hey, listen, we know enough to know that we don't know enough, right, about this. So help us through this process. Help us keep us on track with what we got to do. Like, help us create that end goal of where we want to go, what we want to look like, what we're trying to achieve, and then build the ladder to get there along the way. And then just kind of keep us on track with all those things. And I'll tell you what, as a company, you will get there more succinctly over the long period of time. You'll actually save money than trying to basically throw it away on a lot of false starts or start and stops and all that stuff, and bad branding and misalignment. Like, you'll just kind of hire that expert, and they will take you to where you want to go over the appropriate period of time. And when you get there, you will have a sound brand that's consistent, that embodies your culture, and really the marketplace begins to know you for exactly that. So that's really the business advice that I would have, because it's all depends on where you want to go as a company. And for us, we want to be the well-known employment agency in the country. And so we understand it's an investment that we have to make, and we're willing to.
Thank you, Dan. That's awesome. All right. Well, like I said, I could talk to you all day, but I want to respect your time. So before we go, I do want to give you an opportunity. You mentioned people, and I know that there is something in your space that you're launching that you're excited about. So I'd love to give you an opportunity to just share that with the brand bosses for a minute.
Yeah, so absolutely. So one of the things that I'm passionate about is obviously giving back and helping impact people. It's something that I love. I want to see somebody that has potential and a dream. And if I can help them achieve that and kind of like fully tap their potential to achieve their dream, like, that's something that's important to me. The space I'm in is obviously staffing. And as we've acquired companies, I've gotten to know, these owners that got into staffing for a particular reason. A lot of times it was to secure financial freedom and be able to retire on their terms. And getting to know them through that process, I realized that, all these agencies, they face some of the similar challenges at the same revenue point or the plateau that they have. And I realized that, Employment Solutions was fortunate enough to be able to put some systems in place to be able to kind of escape that plateau and realize the success that we're going to have. So through that understanding, I'm actually going to be setting out to connect with a lot of other independent staffing agency owners just like me that might be struggling in that same area that I was way back in 2008. And then just teach them what we did. and help them kind of grow their business to the level that they want to do so they can actually get their financial future back on track and retire, on their terms, in a sooner, better capacity. So we're launching that. It's called Staffing Mastery. And really the cool thing about what we're doing is this is the season that we're in with the FAQ show is literally week after week. We're actually just showcasing and reporting back on the things that we did in a given week to grow this business, and what we tried and what worked and what we tried and what didn't work. And anyone that listens to that show will basically hear our journey of staffing mastery, and we'll start to actually learn the people that we connect with and the owners out there that we help get their business going in the direction they need it to so they can retire better and sooner.
That's so incredible. I respect that so much about you. You are always not even willing to, eager to invest and to pour your wisdom into others. And I think that's incredible. Even in your space where some people would see it as like, oh, you're helping competitors or whatever, I know that that's not how we roll. That's not how you roll. That's not how I roll. And I think that's incredible. I can't wait to watch that grow. So what is the best way for people to connect with you, whether about that or just to learn from you or employment solutions?
So the best way to connect with me is LinkedIn. Just find me on LinkedIn, Dan Mori, and connect with me there. Send me a request. You can, in the message, just say, hey, I heard you on the Brand Boss Show. Connect with me on there. I'll definitely accept, and hopefully we can get to know you there. As far as following along with the FAQ show and what we're doing with Staffing Mastery, the best way is to just join on the podcast. Follow us on Instagram at the FAQ show and check us out. And you're going to learn all about Staffing Mastery. We're still in its infancy. And as we promote more information about that, we'll share the best ways to connect with that individually.
That's great. Thank you so much. And also go back and check their earlier episodes. You're going to get so much wisdom about perspective and mindset. And, they get real raw and vulnerable too. And there's just so many gold nuggets in there. So go check that out. I know that's going to bring value to you. Dan, I just thank you so much for being here today. I appreciate you. I'm so grateful for the value that you add to my life. I'm grateful for the value that you've added to all of the brand bosses today. And just thank you for being with us and sharing your wisdom.
Awesome. Glad to be here and keep rocking it.